Invisible among illustrious names, he carried a double heritage and a mind that no one wanted to see, until an impossible problem changed everything. When silence is no longer enough, intelligence becomes a shout. The classroom at Jefferson Institute always smelled of fresh chalk and old books. Between its cream-colored walls, Zane Carter Williams sat every morning at the same desk, next to the window overlooking the courtyard of maple trees. His gaze, dark and deep like New Orleans coffee, remained fixed on the blackboard, avoiding any contact that might betray his presence. He didn't smile. He didn't participate. He breathed with the discretion of someone who wishes to blend with the air. He had been at the Institute for exactly 43 days, the most prestigious and exclusive school in Westfield, where families paid exorbitant fees to ensure their children inherited not only knowledge, but also the right connections. Zane was the only student of Arab-American descent in that sanctuary of historic surnames and metropolitan pedigree. His mother, Amira, had arrived from Beirut 20 years ago. His father, Michael Williams, descendant of Michigan merchants, met her while she was selling crafts at the Heritage Market. They fell in love amid hand-woven scarves and damascene silk. Together, they built an import business from scratch that, after years of sacrifice and sleepless nights, finally took off. Their only desire, to give Zane what they never had. Education is the only inheritance that no one can steal from you, Amira would repeat as she adjusted his uniform each morning. But within that school, where surnames weighed more than grades, Zane carried a stigma. To his classmates, he was simply the Arab. Even though he was born in Brookside and had never been to his mother's country, he was the one with the weird lunch when he took out his hummus with pita bread, the one with the peculiar accent when pronouncing certain words, a legacy of childhood hearing two languages at home. The one who didn't understand local jokes, who didn't play football in the same private leagues, who didn't vacation in Aspen or the Hamptons. "Did you see that? Mohammed brought his terrorist food again?" whispered Brandon Montgomery to his group while pointing at Zane's lunchbox during recess. The poorly concealed laughter hurt, but the indifference was worse. It was as if a force field surrounded him, keeping him separate from everyone else. The teachers treated him with a condescension that scraped his dignity. "Don't worry if you don't understand everything, Zane. It's normal that you need to adapt." As if his brain functioned at a lower speed because Lebanese blood ran through his veins. Ms. Eleanor Blackwell was known as the most feared teacher at the Institute. Advanced mathematics, hair always gathered in an impeccable bun, glasses that slid to the tip of her nose when she evaluated a student, with her penetrating gaze. She had a reputation for valuing only the best of the best, and those best often coincided with the children of the city's most influential families. That Wednesday in November, the heat crept through the windows despite the autumn season. Ms. Blackwell, after explaining a series of differential equations that didn't even correspond to high school level, but rather university, smiled with that gesture her students knew well. She was about to launch a challenge. "Today I have a special problem," she announced, writing on the blackboard a sequence of numbers and symbols that occupied 3 complete lines. "This is something they present in international competitions. Not even many adults with master's degrees could solve it. But I want to see if someone here has the necessary spark." Silence engulfed the classroom. Brandon Montgomery, son of the owner of a hotel chain, tried to solve it. He gave up after 5 minutes. Rachel Adams, who had a scholarship for academic excellence, also tried. She gave up in frustration. One by one, the outstanding students surrendered to the impossible problem. Zane observed the blackboard from his corner by the window. In his mind, the numbers danced, rearranged themselves, formed patterns that no one else seemed to see. He had learned to play with mathematics since he was young. His father taught him to calculate percentages at the market when he was barely 6 years old, and his mother told him about ancient Arab mathematicians before sleeping, instead of traditional stories. His hand rose slowly, almost with a life of its own. The murmur of contained laughter was not long in coming. "The Arab wants to try?" someone whispered. Miss Blackwell raised an eyebrow, incredulous. She looked at Zane as if it were the first time she noticed his existence. "Mr. Carter, would you like to participate?" "Williams Carter," he corrected, in a voice so low it was barely heard. "Whatever," she replied impatiently. "Go ahead, show us your attempt." Zane stood up. His legs felt like lead as he walked to the blackboard. He took the chalk, his hand slightly trembling at first. Then something changed. The numbers flowed through him like clear water. The reasoning unfolded with surgical precision. He didn't need to erase even once. Each line naturally led to the next, with a mathematical elegance that seemed almost artistic. When he finished, he placed the chalk in the tray and turned to face the class. 30 pairs of eyes stared at him fixedly. Ms. Blackwell remained motionless, her face a mask of astonishment that struggled to maintain composure. She reviewed the solution once, then again. Her lips tightened into a thin line. "Where did you learn this method?" she finally asked. "Did someone teach it to you?" "I saw it," Zane simply replied. "The numbers have patterns like constellations." The silence that followed had its own weight. "You may go to recess," announced the teacher, without taking her eyes off the blackboard. Zane returned to his seat, picked up his backpack, and left last as always. But this time, as he crossed the threshold, he felt the gazes following him. They were no longer the same. Something had changed that afternoon. The news spread like wildfire through the waxed hallways of the institute. The Arab kid solved Blackwell's impossible problem. Rumors grew, transformed. Some said he had cheated. Others that he had a mathematician uncle who had taught him the solution. Some even whispered that perhaps he had some form of autism that gave him special abilities. Ms. Blackwell in the teacher's lounge was trying to minimize the event. "He probably saw that problem in some book," she commented, while stirring her coffee with more force than necessary. "Or maybe it was luck. Young people sometimes get things right by chance." But Mr. Ramirez, the literature teacher, who always observed his students with a novelist's eye, gently shook his head. "Eleanor, that boy has never asked for the spotlight. In fact, he does everything possible to disappear into the background of the classroom. If he solved your problem, it wasn't to impress anyone." Some teachers began to pay attention to Zane, to observe him, to discover that he not only turned in impeccable assignments, but that his literature essays revealed an uncommon sensitivity, that his knowledge of world history surpassed the school curriculum, that he spoke not only English, but also Arabic fluently. He wasn't just intelligent. He was extraordinary, and most peculiar. He had never tried to prove it. The invitations began to arrive. The math club, the team for the National Science Olympiad, the school yearbook needed an assistant editor. Suddenly, everyone wanted Zane in their projects. But as he walked through the hallways, now with occasional greetings from those who previously ignored him, something stirred within him. A persistent question. Should he feel grateful for finally being visible? For being valued only after proving that he could be useful? During dinner, in the small dining room of their apartment in Fairview, Zane distractedly moved his herb rice around. "What's wrong, Habibi?" asked Amira, using the affectionate term in Arabic. "You've barely touched your food." Michael lowered his newspaper, observing his son with attention. "Problems at school?" he inquired gently. Zane put his fork down on the plate. "Now everyone wants me to be on their teams and projects," he responded in a measured voice, "but only because I solved a problem. Before, I was invisible." His parents exchanged glances. Michael extended his hand across the table, covering his son's. "Sometimes, we need to open the door for others to see what's inside," he said. "It's not fair, but it's human. I don't want to be accepted just for being useful," Zane continued, "or for being a curiosity. Look at the Arab kid who's good at math." Amira got up and sat next to him, gently running her fingers through his black hair. "My child, for centuries our ancestors had to prove their worth in foreign lands. It shouldn't be this way, but when you blaze a trail, you don't do it just for yourself. You do it for those who will come after." That night, lying in his bed, looking at the ceiling where he had stuck constellations that glowed in the dark, Zane thought about his mother's words. Perhaps she was right. Perhaps this was just the first step. He decided to accept some of the invitations. He joined the math club. He began to prepare for academic Olympiads. His classmates, initially distant, gradually lowered their defenses. Rachel Adams, the scholarship girl, was the first to approach genuinely, without pretensions or morbid curiosity. That day, with Blackwell's problem, it was impressive, she told him during a study session. Like you could see something the rest of us can't see. Zane smiled for the first time in weeks. I just see patterns, everything is connected if you know where to look. But fate would test his resilience again. Jefferson Institute was invited to participate in the National Logic and Debate Tournament, a prestigious event that brought together the best schools in the country. The principal, Dr. Caroline Spencer, called a special meeting with the teachers and the student council. We need our best element at the head of the team, she announced, someone who can represent us with brilliance and dignity. All eyes turned to Zane. Even Brandon Montgomery, who still maintained a certain distance, reluctantly nodded. I think Zane should lead the team, proposed the philosophy teacher. His analytical capacity is exceptional. The principal smiled, but there was a certain tension in her eyes. Of course, he will be a fundamental part of the team, she responded cautiously. However, for the position of captain, we need to consider other factors. The atmosphere in the room subtly changed. That same afternoon, the philosophy teacher found Zane in the library. You should know something, she told him in a low voice. A group of influential parents sent an email to the administration. They argued that the image of the institute must be preserved, and that perhaps it would be better if a more traditional student represented the school as captain. Zane felt as if he had been doused with ice water. Because I'm of Arab descent, he asked, although he already knew the answer. The teacher pressed her lips together. The principal is under pressure. The Montgomerys and the Wilsons are important donors. The next day at the school assembly, the principal announced that Brandon Montgomery would be the captain of the team for the tournament. Zane was named chief strategist, an invented title that everyone knew was an empty concession. Something broke inside him. It wasn't anger. It was deeper, more painful. A confirmation of what he had always suspected. No matter how much he proved his worth, for some, he would always be the other. That afternoon, while everyone was leaving, Zane remained seated on the stairs of the main courtyard. The sun filtered through the maple branches, casting dancing shadows on the ground. He thought about requesting a transfer. He thought about giving up. Sometimes the shade is cooler, don't you think? The voice startled him. It was Mr. Jones, the janitor who had been working at the institute for more than 30 years. An older man with skin weathered by the sun and calloused hands, who always greeted all students equally, regardless of their surnames or the model of car that picked them up. Excuse me? Asked Zane. Mr. Jones sat down beside him, with the familiarity of someone who has seen generations of students pass through these stairs. I was saying that sometimes the shade is better than being under the spotlight, he repeated, pointing toward the maples. But other times, young man, you have to step into the light even if it burns a little. Zane observed the old man with curiosity. Do you know what happened? Within these walls, everything is heard, responded Mr. Jones, with a tired smile. I've seen many like you come and go. Some give up, others fight. The best transform. Transform what? The fear in the eyes of those who don't understand what's different, he said, standing up with effort. You have a light, kid. Only you're trying to dim it to fit where you don't belong. The words resonated with Zane all night. A light. It was no longer about being accepted or valued. It was about something deeper, more essential, integrity. The next morning before the first class, he asked to speak with the principal. I would like to request a slot in the next student assembly, he said with a clear voice, without a trace of the tremor that used to accompany his rare public interventions. The principal looked at him with surprise. May I ask the reason, young Carter? Williams Carter, he corrected, this time firmly. And yes, I want to share something important with the whole school. The Friday student assembly always had the same format: administrative announcements, academic recognitions, information about extracurricular activities. When Zain went up to the podium, a murmur of curiosity ran through the auditorium. He had never before asked to speak. He stood in front of the microphone, he took a deep breath, and he began to speak. "My name is Zain Williams Carter. I was born in Brookside. My mother is Lebanese, my father is from Michigan. For 43 days I tried to be invisible in this school." He paused, his eyes scanning the rows of students. "Not because I wanted to disappear, but because every look reminded me that for you I was the foreigner, the different one, the one who doesn't belong." The silence was absolute. Even the teachers who usually checked their phones during assemblies were paying attention. "A few days ago, the administration received an email from some parents," he continued. "I won't mention names, but they suggested that I shouldn't represent the institute at the national tournament because I don't correspond with the traditional image of this school." The murmurs began. Some students looked uncomfortably at Brandon, who sunk his head between his shoulders. "I'm not here to complain," Zain clarified. "I'm here to ask, what kind of institution do we want to be? One that values appearances over abilities, one that perpetuates the same prejudices that have divided our society for centuries?" The principal shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Some teachers exchanged tense looks. "My mother told me that the first great mathematicians who introduced algebra and the numbers we use today came from the Arab world," he continued. "My father taught me that in America, our greatness has always come from our diversity, from being a melting pot of cultures. Are we learning that here?" Zain took a folded paper from his pocket. "This is the email that determined I couldn't be the team captain," he said, holding it up. "I won't read all of it. I'll just say that it mentions the word image 7 times and the word ability none." The atmosphere was electric. Rachel Adams was the first to stand up, then other students, not all but enough. Applause began, timid at first, then growing like a wave. Zain finished with a clear voice. "If this institute exists to prepare us for the future, then we must ask ourselves, what future are we building? One where we continue to judge by surnames and origins, or one where each person is valued for their abilities and character?" The ovation was deafening. That afternoon, the principal convened an emergency meeting with the school board. Rumors spread like wildfire. Zain's speech had been recorded by several students and was circulating on social media. Parents from other families, many of them progressive entrepreneurs or academics, began to contact the school expressing their support for diversity and questioning the selection process. The pressure was enough. 3 days later, the principal announced a reconsideration of the team leadership for the tournament. An objective test would be conducted among all candidates. Zain won by an overwhelming margin. Under his leadership, the Jefferson Institute team not only qualified for the final of the national tournament, but presented such an innovative approach to the problems posed that the judges created a special mention for disruptive thinking and methodological excellence. When the victory was announced, Rachel was the first to hug him. Then the rest of the team. Even Brandon, who had proven to be an excellent speaker during the competition, acknowledged Zain's merit. But the most significant moment came after the ceremony, when a freshman student, whom Zain barely knew, approached him timidly. "Thank you," she told him with bright eyes. "My family comes from Guatemala. I always thought I had to hide it to fit in here. Today I saw things I had never seen before." The transformation didn't end there. Jefferson Institute received an unexpected proposal. The National University wanted to implement a scholarship program for outstanding students, with a special track for young people of foreign origin or multicultural background. Zain was invited to collaborate in designing the program and eventually to become one of the first beneficiaries. During his university years, while studying applied mathematics and engineering, Zain began to work on a project that combined his two worlds. He created a foundation called Bridges, dedicated to facilitating the academic integration of young immigrants or those of multicultural origin into elite educational institutions. He developed adaptive methodologies, organized conferences, and gradually became a reference in the field. The young man who was once ignored was now listened to by school principals, educational authorities, and even by those who once looked at him with disdain. 10 years after the day he solved that impossible problem, Zane returned to Jefferson Institute, this time as a guest speaker. Principal Spencer had retired years ago. The new administration, more progressive, had implemented policies of inclusion and diversity. The institute now boasted students of more than 15 different nationalities. As he walked down that hallway that he had traversed so many times with his head down, Zane noticed something. A group of first-year students was waiting outside a classroom. Among them, a boy with Asian features remained slightly apart, his gaze fixed on the floor, as if trying to become invisible. As he passed by him, Zane slowed his steps. The boy looked up for an instant. Their eyes met. Zane smiled and nodded slightly. A small gesture almost imperceptible to anyone else, but for that boy, it was as if someone had turned on a light in a dark room, a light that said, "I see you. You are here, and that matters." It was no longer about him. It was about the path he had opened, and the many who would come after, walking with their heads held high through hallways that once seemed not to be made for them. The true victory wasn't in the recognitions or the applause. It was in that simple moment of mutual recognition, in the certainty that no light should be extinguished to please the darkness of others. Because there are struggles that don't end with one person, but continue through generations, like a torch that passes from hand to hand, illuminating paths previously invisible. We hope this story of inclusion, dignity, and silent talent has inspired you. If you ever felt that your worth had to be proven more than once to be accepted, this story is for you. Explore our special playlist, available here to the left of the video. Do you also believe there are talents that flourish better outside the spotlight? Or that the true victory is when we open paths for others? Tell us your story or that of someone you admire, until the next story that honors the invisible and celebrates the authentic.